Hello and welcome to the Psyched to Practice podcast, your one stop for practical and useful clinical information, masterful insights from experts in the field, and a guide to daily living. I'm your host, Paul Wagner, and joining me as always is
Christner.
Kind of an interesting topic we're wanting to get into for today, wanting to make this practical and helpful, but also wanting to give a bit of an update. And this topic, I think, strangely really fits both really well.
Yeah, I agree. So it's something that's always, I think, been important to me is the idea of professional development. And, so that's been something that has been at I think a core for me as part of my career. But now, as I kind of reflect my 30 years in doing this and being involved in continuing ed, the opportunity now with Psyched to Practice to also help others on that journey to professional development, which is great.
If you've been a listener to the show for a while, you've heard our updates talking about looking at offering CE credits, wanting to use the podcast as an opportunity just because it's trying to make it accessible and trying to make it affordable. We are nearing the final steps to be able to really kind of take that. So I believe that our launch date is October 1st, 2025. We are officially opening up, and if you've been a part of some of our early trial groups with some of the webinars, we appreciate you taking the time. We appreciate you helping us work out some of the kinks and some of the bugs here.
Right.
But just wanting to also take some time to talk about the importance of continuing education and how we can make sure we're getting the most out of it.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting. We're all required to get it. I don't know that anyone ever taught me how to do it.
No, absolutely not.
Everybody says, hey, you just have to, you need these for licensure, you need these credits. And, and it was interesting. I never learned about professional development well in my education, but I had a great supervisor. Like my first supervisor I had, he just really knew how to make me think about professional development, not in I need credits to stay certified or licensed, but more, what did I want to get out of it? And, thinking back over, the past years we're developing, this platform, it really made me think about that because it really made me look at it from not this idea that we attend workshops or we listen to podcasts, but what is really this kind of this overarching professional development process that I go through. And, I think maybe I've said this on the show before, like I have mine planned out. Like I kind of have almost like a 5-year plan with professional development. And not that doesn't change because something, of course, new comes in, but like every year I sit down and kind of go through and look at, okay, what are some hot topics I want to get into? What are areas I just want to enhance? What are things maybe that I think I do well, but I need to do more to continue to do those things well? And so it's really a thoughtful and intentional process for me. But that's taken a lot of years to get there, I think.
And, I don't know that I have quite the scope as you're sharing there, but I certainly feel like there's these areas where, one, if I'm curious and it's something that I'm hearing about, especially in sessions, but if it feels like, parents are asking me something or clients are asking me, and I don't have that information that I feel confident, I might feel confident in knowing where to direct them to get that information. But if I'm not able to share or talk intentionally, that bothers me. I want to be seen and maintain being seen as a professional who, is competent and able to really offer guidance in a way that, is going to be effective. And I think that's how we really need to approach continuing education is, are we continuing to provide effective guidance and support for those that we serve? And, if I know I've also been on the other end of like, I'm scrambling to get credits. Right. I don't know that offered a lot of guidance. It was more of hey, what's available? I need this here. So I think that being intentional piece is so valuable. And I think trying to balance this quality versus quantity of, hey, I just need these numbers versus, am I getting something meaningful? Is it enhancing my practice? Am I providing a better service? And am I I growing as a clinician? So there's a lot of these variables to really consider when you're deciding what your plan is or what your strategy is for continuing education.
Yeah, it's interesting when you were, kind of saying, kind of going through that, a couple of thoughts for me was, what you were talking about really does kind of highlight this kind of overarching ethical imperative that we have, right? Like but it's not ethical just in, again, the CE credits. Like it's ethical because we provide better care. We do better for clients. We can point them in the right direction. And I think also, we did an episode a while back about ethics and self-care. And I don't want to discount how much professional development is self-care. And what we have seen in like research that's been done is that those who feel more confident in their skills and role have less burnout. So we're not feeling like we're scrambling or reacting when we don't know something. We really have this proactive stance. So, I think, it's not just about the credits. It really is about I think probably the most important, our ability to provide good quality evidence-based care for people.
And that just reminds a different podcast that's completely unrelated to mental health that was talking about safety standards for amusement parks, which is a weird tangent I'm going to go on.
What a weird tangent.
But they were talking about how like in early amusement parks, there weren't any. And how oftentimes the first trial run had people on it. And if we're practicing, it's almost, if we're practicing without really having a strong foundation, a strong base that we can rely on, it's kind of like, oh, I hope this works. But also these people that are coming to see me, that are trusting in me, that I've done my due diligence, I want to make sure that I feel confident that if you're getting on this ride, that you're going to be safe and that I can predict what your experience is going to be. And I don't want there to be a risk in terms of, man, I hope I bolted that down. Or, man, I hope I told them, something that was helpful, or just wanting to make sure we feel confident in the direction that we're pointing people and the guidance that we're offering there, because I don't want it to feel shoddy.
Yeah, and I mean, that is a tangent going, about amusement park rides. But I also think it's a really good metaphor, though, right? I mean, I think that, not only from, again, safety and everything for people, but can you imagine the stress of those people that were running amusement parks?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like, I want to know for my own well-being that their well-being is secure. Like I'm not gonna be able to sleep at night. It's like,
wow, man, it's like, I mean, gosh, interesting, difference over time. Right. Yes. So I mean, I think that's all important. I mean, I think so there's this ethical piece to it, but, I think when we talk about professional development, I also think maybe it's important to talk about the upsides and downsides. I mean, I think, it's, again, we all know it's a good thing to do, but, I always kind of look at, what's been the benefits to me in my career by taking the approach I have, but it does come with costs. Like, I mean, I think that, it's not just like, oh, this is all great.
Yeah.
Sometimes, but so, I mean, how about for you? Like, what do you see as kind of the upside pieces?
I think certainly, like, going back to that, just confidence. And I would say confidence in being able to almost specializing in a way. So I don't want to be a jack of all trades. I want to be, a master of a few. We've had many episodes where we're talking to clinicians that are working with diverse populations, where I'm sitting there recognizing that sounds like there's core pieces that are so connective, but what they're doing, the interventions that they're utilizing, so far out of the scope of my experience. And, at times it leaves me questioning, like, wow, what is it that I'm doing? And then we talk about ADHD. And it's just like, I then recognize, I can talk about that with a level of expertise and a level of confidence. And so I think the value of being able to specialize in roles, because then we really are able to see this growth. And again, we recently talked to, about we recently talked about psychosis, and an area where I've worked with maybe 2-3 individuals with psychosis, and hearing the experiences there, and yet, some connection. But again, we recently, again, kind of some self-promotion. We recently had Ari Tuckman on for a live webinar, and getting to hear him talk, I don't know that I was surprised by anything that he shared. And so like there's a level of like, yep, nope, I hear that. Oh, that's an interesting way of approaching that. Right. But I know the approach already. And now here's a different twist, or here's a different piece of it. And there's some nuance. Like I think I asked Ari at the very end about the impact of vitamin C on how medication is broken down and absorbed. That's not a conversation I'm having about psychosis, because I don't even know that conversation exists. Right. So being able to have that level of expertise in a specific area or a few specific areas. And I know not everyone is going to specialize, but I think that that's one of the career advancements that I really didn't consider until starting to really lean into what is it that I want my career to look like, and what is the population I want to serve.
Yeah, it's all great points. I mean, I look at it as well as like, there are areas that, it's always great to go to a workshop and go, all right, I'm on track, right? Yeah. I know this stuff. It feels good. But I also think it equally feels good not to know. Like it's kind of funny. Like I've brought up to many people, there's a few conferences I've gone to that have been challenging for me. Like I go in there and I feel like a student, and in a good way. Like it is a good way challenge where it's like, I'm not just sitting there to get through it. Like I'm really learning something new. And honestly, it's one of, I think, some of my favorite pieces about the podcast is like, we have somebody like Aaron Brennan on, and, he's talking about psychosis. And I'm like you, I've worked with people with psychosis, but not at nearly the level he has. And, I love that curiosity that it brings out in me. So, it was great reading his book. It was great listening. And, am I going to necessarily change my practice to treating psychosis? Probably not. But for me, I go, so for an upside for me is I'm now equipped with some knowledge or tools that if that question comes up, I can give some answers. I can give some resources, and do so in a confident manner. So, I mean, I think there's this two parts. It's building that expertise, which I love, and love being able to take it to a different level. But I also love going to workshops that make me balanced as well and pull me out of my comfort zone to think a little differently, even if I'm not necessarily going to do it every day.
And I recognized, depending on where you're located at, you're going to have different requirements in terms of continuing education, how many credits, live versus not, home study, those pieces there. But I'm curious of your opinion here, Ray. Like, let's take some of the standard requirements and put them to the side. They have a really important role in this conversation. But so if we're thinking about some of the ethics pieces, putting them to the side, suicide, putting it aside, child abuse, putting that to the side. In terms of the areas of specific focus versus the areas of exploration, do you have a ratio that you look for in terms like again, these other pieces we need to build in are so important, but like that skill development for something that you're already have a strong background. Like what's that ratio there?
Yeah. So I don't know if I have necessarily a ratio, but I do have a process. So there's a process that goes with it. So for me, there's always these areas I want to continue to advance my expertise in. And those, and it's not just attending professional development workshops or webinars. For me, I look at professional development as this real spectrum. Yeah. So let's say it's an area that I have knowledge in and I want to expand. I'm probably going to be like, okay, over the next year, I'm going to do 1 or 2 workshops. I might then start looking at, okay, is there a podcast out there about that topic that I could follow along with, that I could kind of just, when I'm driving down the road, I can listen and be a passive learner to some extent. But then I might identify some books that I want to do. What are some journals that I'm going to do around that area? So I don't know if I have a ratio necessarily, but that's kind of how I look at it. New topics for me often start with I'm either going to look at research or I'm going to read books. That's number one. And then if it piques my interest, I'm going to then go and say, okay, maybe I'll do a workshop on that. I'll give you an example. I had, I don't know, I got into this idea of regret. The concept of regret was just, I don't know, I say it's because I'm getting older and, now I'm like, okay, I don't want to regret things before I move on to the next part of my journey. But so I got into it, and I read a book about regret, and then looked at some research, and then I was like, oh, who's the person that's great at this? So found out there's a great CBT legend, Robert Leahy, who is phenomenal, who wrote a book about it. So I got his book, and then found out where he was presenting, and then went to it. So there was a development process for that with me. So yeah, I don't know if I have a ratio, but I also, I mean, and I'm going to say I'm going to say I'm a good example in this case. I don't scramble for credits. I always have way more than I need because I am so curious with wanting to, like right now I have 3 or 4 different webinars that I'm watching in bits and pieces. So I don't know if it's a ratio as much as just a continual process for me.
And, I think that comes back to this idea of having a plan and being able to look ahead to, okay, there's the requirements. They're almost thinking of CE as requirements, CE as development.
Right.
And, ideally we want to hit both of those. But when you're talking about like not scrambling, again, early in my career, I was in a community-based mental health agency, and it wasn't a required training, but it was presented kind of like you had to be there.
Sure.
And so it was nice. I got all my credits. I didn't have to go searching for it, but it wasn't also, here are all the topics and here are all the things. And so it wasn't until I was actually kind of like a few years in, and I'm like, after leaving that, and I was like, I don't know where to go. I don't know, like, right. I would just, it was already put on my calendar that these meetings would happen, and I would get the credits, and there was some great information. So I don't want to knock that, but that idea of then being able to like make a plan, I didn't have to have a plan. It was done for me.
Right.
And so it then led to, again, ADHD, just winging it, some poor executive function around it. So I think I've also tried to structure and saying like, okay, when are these due? When am I really wanting to kind of like highlight this? And so, there might be a little bit of a juggling to say, I'm going to make sure that I have everything that I need here, that everything's going to count. Before I go and purchase this program or look into that, maybe that's going to be for next year. So there is this kind of, I think, almost booking myself, but needing to be intentional with it, because if it's not, then it is, oh man, it's getting near the end of the year and I have 2 months to fit in, a bunch of credits. And that's the scramble I want everyone to avoid.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think everybody's been there. I mean, I've had those moments. Yeah. I mean, I've had those moments myself, but I think I've gotten better over time, of course, with it. But it's, I mean, I think it's just depending on how you want to use it. So for me, I mentioned, I had this great supervisor. His name was Glenn Rupp. He was a school psychologist. My first school psychology job, he was the guy that did supervision for me. And, he got me talking about career advancement my first year in psychology. So it was always like, what's the path you're taking? What's the journey you're going to go on through your training? And, and it's really, for me, been such an incredible kind of journey to be on, because it's let me go into a bunch of different areas, and they've never been by accident. Like it's always been this kind of, oh, wait, like I want to learn more about forensic psychology. So how am I going to start doing that? What's my process going to be? And, and then you never really feel like you're scrambling, and you end up being amazed how many like I'm shocked sometimes how many credits that I end up with over time. But again, there's a negative to that. It costs money to do it. There's a whole bunch of other things, but it's also like even those required pieces, like, yes, we all have to do ethics, But I do think we have a choice of how we want to do ethics. So for me, even that's somewhat intentional. Like this year, I was really interested in ethics and technology in practice, and AI, which we've talked about many times, and telepsychology and cybersecurity and all of those pieces. So my ethics continuing education this year really was focused on how do I better that piece of it. My ethics last year was self-care. It was, coming out of whole COVID stuff and everything, really for me was more like, okay, what do I need to do for me to be a better practitioner? Um, Next year, that's going to take a whole different, a different
to be determined.
twist. It's going to be a different twist. But I have some areas. So honestly, like I'm, John Gavazzi, who just did a webinar for us, talked about moral reasoning, and it became fascinating to me. And especially with everything that's going on worldwide, I was like, wow, I need to take a deeper dive in how moral reasoning and ethics, what that looks like. So that's probably going to be my path. So
yeah,
but I think everybody does it different. For me, I love being organized because it has given me some direction of where I want to go, and it's given me some balance. Like I have so many areas that I want to focus on therapeutically, so many for evaluations, so many in specialties like forensics and neuropsychology. How do we do that? So I've kind of balanced mine out, but yeah, I don't know if there's a perfect way. It just works for me doing it that way.
And, as you were talking about this, and, I'm also kind of pulling from some of our private conversations, but to go back to John Gavazzi's recent webinar, like you talked about like just how good that one was.
It was so good. Yeah.
Right. and truly that's not us just trying to ham it up for, for the fact that, good. We're check the website soon. Well, it'll be there. But that really got me thinking about how there are workshops or trainings, even if it's not in person, if it's virtual and I'm sitting there at home, watching on, my tablet or my computer, when I'm like, that was so good. And like, right. I'm excited.
Love it. Yeah.
And like, it just like, I'm going and I'm talking to my wife about it. Like, I'm sharing that. And then there's the ones where I have it on and I'm listening. And then all of a sudden I realize I'm like, I just missed what they said. And I need to go back to it. I need to go backwards there. So I think it's also in part, like, how are we intentionally engaging and going back to like not doing it randomly?
Right.
Where we're going should not be a roulette wheel or whatever, shows up on Google, in terms of like, CE credits that I can access right now. Like, I think letting there be some buy-in, because when we have that buy-in, it creates excitement. And even going back to the self-care piece, it's, we're not then just passively engaging. It should only be a portion of how we're really doing this. And if we're passively engaging with all of our continuing education, again, I don't know that we're providing an effective, we're not developing further, and it might impact our skill and our presentation and, what we're providing when it comes to those that we're supporting.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's interesting. I mean, good professional development creates energy, right?
Yeah.
It creates this kind of zest that we kind of have that you mentioned about recording with John, and, I sat there for the 2 hours, and then I kept him after we were done recording for probably another 40 minutes picking his brain. And listen, ethics is not exciting. Let's be honest. Like, it's not like, that's not the one, but I was so fascinated with the way he presented it and the different kind of thinking that was involved. It became exciting for me. After we got off, I'm still kind of writing notes and thoughts that I had. And I think that's what I love about professional development. I think that's sometimes harder when we're doing webinars or things like that. But like, it's my favorite part about going to conferences. I go to 5 or 6 conferences a year. I'm lucky that I am able to do that. But I love the energy that comes from it. And I do think that there are ways that we can do that virtually as well. I have some groups that I will call them peer consultation groups, for lack of a better word, where It's friends that have similar interests, and we'll talk. We'll talk shop, and I like that. I mean, I love that process. So I think there's a lot of ways we can kind of do it, but when it's good, it is really exciting, and when it's bad, it really isn't.
Yeah. And, you said something there that I think is really important, which is professional development isn't only continuing education for credits. It is the podcast, it's the
Right.
books, it's the journal articles, but it's also engaging with other professionals in conversation. And whether that's as a mentor or as a peer, it's being able to have open and insightful discussions and being able to share that. And, sometimes it's disagreements and how to approach a case. So it might be case consultation is professional development. So, I also think as we're talking about this topic, I know my scope of it, previously really was, it's like, oh, professional development, that's what you need to do to keep your license.
Right.
It's just CEUs.
Right.
But there's so much more to it. And
Right.
there's nuance. And I think, we have to go back to, I guess, what your mentor and that professional development told you early on of what do you want your career to be? Like, what's the direction? What's the outlook that you want there? And that's such an important question. And if there hasn't been someone in your life who's asked you that before, I want to ask you, where do you want to take your career? What are the ways that you need to develop that both through continuing education credits, but also who are the groups of individuals you need to talk to? Who is the mentor that you want to connect with, or the mentors you want to connect with? And how do you put out, like, really kind of give something a try that really feels meaningful? We're not just going through the motions.
Yeah. It's really, it's interesting. I mean, this isn't just, I think, in our profession. And I want to say that I read this in like Forbes magazine, or it was a business magazine. And they were talking about research about people who were the best in their fields. Like they did this kind of huge study, like, so they looked at people like, the astronauts that work for NASA, the top engineers, the top architects, the top doctors, and they tried to find what commonalities they had to get to that. And sure, I think there's probably intelligence involved, and there are some skills that they have. But when they started looking at things, one of the things that stood out to me, because I'm a crazy reader, like I just love to read, was that all of them read at least 80 books a year.
Wow.
Yeah. Like that was the number. Now, like I get around 75-ish. Like that's sometimes I'll go over, but sometimes I don't. But so I like to read, but I think we're now in a day and age that, like, I still will never stop reading. And I'm sure many people listening, they read a lot as well, and that's what they like. But we're also now, we have so much access to that knowledge. I mean, I think the other piece is I listen to podcasts or books on tape when I'm driving. I'll listen to the radio sometimes and listen to music because I just want to zone out. But what a great use of time. Or, maybe I'll be doing something in my office and I'll be playing an audio book or something to listen to. We have so many resources at our fingertips now. I bring that study up because I just wonder what that's going to look like in the future. Like, maybe it's not going to be 80 books, but I bet you there is some tie to content that they're getting and trying to, how we're consuming the content that's out there. And I love books, but I'll say in professional development, books lag. I mean, by the time something is written and published, it could be 18 months before it's out. It's almost old before it comes out. The world of podcasts and webinars and just online blogs and all these different sources that we have, they're immediate. I mean, which is exciting. Journals are getting better. I mean, I think journals now, they're turning things around faster. But now, we're not going to see this lag of CE development. We're going to see, I think we are seeing it coming out faster. And the books are almost have to catch up to the other content that's out there.
And there's a part of this, and I don't, this is purely speculation of that in some ways that easier access creates less investment in the experience or in the information. And so my thought goes to AI. I love AI. But there's a portion where, like, especially if I'm talking to college students or something like that, and they're like, oh, I threw it in AI. I'm like, man, you missed out on an opportunity. Like you missed out on an opportunity to learn. Yeah, you got a good grade on it. AI knows what it's talking about. But wow, you didn't take the time to really engage with material in an insightful way. And again, as I was talking about, even just that kind of passively interacting with a webinar, and it can be, oh, I zoned out, I missed it. And a part of that has to be the way that it's presented and it being engaging. But there's also, I think, I want to get away from the mentality that easy is good.
Right.
Like it should be challenging for us. It should have us stopping. Like, I want there to be words that I don't understand. And then I'm like, that, and then I'm looking it up, and then, send me down a rabbit hole with things. Right. Or even scaffolding wise, like, make it approachable, but make me reach.
Right.
And I think that's a piece of it where when we're talking about content, I want to be cautious with how easy it is to access some of this, because we might take for granted then all the effort that went into it and how significant it is.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, AI is going to give us a tool to do some of this, but there is already some research that shows, mostly in the business world, that people that rely on it too much actually don't make the best decisions. That it's, because it's not a new decision. It really is. Yeah. We're not seeing additional content. They see that in more the business world than what we're seeing maybe yet in education and other fields. But at least that information's coming out. But I think that comes back to that active learning piece. So for me, like the other part of the professional development journey for me is, if I attend a workshop, depending on when it is during the day, but I will always at the end of the day kind of go back, and I don't want to say that I journal. That sounds way too formal, but I really do kind of take whatever I've learned in professional development and I write out some notes about it. Things maybe that I want to think deeper about, maybe I want to go into. Maybe it's a word I don't know, and I'm going to Google it later to put that into my vocabulary. All of those things I think are important. Like there's a reflection I think that comes with professional development that I do think we miss that. And, again, I'm going to give credit to my past mentors, but, I had the first supervisor, if I would go to a workshop somewhere, I would come back and he'd want to talk about it. He'd want to process it. And, I don't have that person necessarily currently, but I do it myself. So if I read a book, whatever I read for the day, I jot notes down about. There's an active process after the fact. And I know there are probably people listening who are kind of going, I don't have time to do that, right? And not that hard to find the time to do it. It's interesting. Like I'll do mine. I might be sitting on, the couch watching TV, and I have a little notepad that I'm writing things down at the end of the day, or sometimes I'll take 5 minutes before I go to bed. Sometimes I'm just too tired, and the next morning I might do it when I get into work. But at some point though, we should be thinking about it, because then I think it lets us take it to the next level. It's how I've been able to write about certain things or do things because it triggered something. It made me dig deeper into it. And then I don't know, again, momentum kind of that happens and excitement that happens when we do.
And when you're talking about just different ways of engaging with the material, like it makes me curious, like there's something that I find really gratifying when I'm excited about something and I'm talking with some of my best friends that aren't in the field whatsoever. But it's interesting because some of they have some ties to it. So one of my best friends just recently graduated from physician's assistant school. And I recall, when he's going through his program, we'd meet up for, dinner or something like that. And, he would just be like, man, look at this practice test I had to take. And like, it was cool to like,
Right.
again,
Yeah.
when you talk about words, I don't know. But
Yeah.
he's kind of going through and like, he's explaining this process, or if I'm attending a workshop, or even just like my experience, like being able to talk about this thing that gets me excited and
Yeah.
sharing it with professionals
Sure.
outside of the profession.
Mm.
Another one of my best friends is a police officer. And so we talk about, different skill sets that he's working on, or different aspects that he's working on. And again, I get to share that. And so being able to also share excitement, I think, is such an important piece, and receiving that excitement from other careers and other professions again. And it's social,
Yeah.
and it's not, case debrief with clients. It's like, dude, listen to the thing I just like found out, or like, okay, I have a quiz for you. Like, and just kind of like those types of interactions there, and it can make it fun. And then again, we're just another time that we're like touching the material itself.
Yeah. I love that, because I think that's important to talk with other people, and it doesn't have to be this drab conversation, but I found that that's helped me integrate. I think that one of the worst things we do is we only read what is specific to our field. Like, there's good research in police science. There's tons of stuff that we could gain in psychology from that. So those discussions for me have always been, again, it helps me connect the dots with different things. It might make me, somebody, my wife's an OT, she may say something that she, learned, and I'd go, oh my gosh, like I could tie that back. One of the things I talk about when I do therapy workshops is goal attainment scaling, and how to use that in effective measurement of outcomes. I learned that from my wife working in rehab science, right? So she's working in rehab, and she mentions it. I'm like, what is that? Like, and then she tells me, and I'm like, why are we not doing this in psychology? Like, this is great. It's a great way to look at progress. That's how we evolve, right?
Yeah.
AI is never going to do that, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's where we kind of take, and I've had friends that are police officers that they'll talk about maybe something they've learned for de-escalation or whatever it may be. And I go, oh, wow, like that's a different take than we have. But I love that idea. I mean, not that all my friends want to talk about that kind of stuff, and nor do I want that to be the whole conversation, but having some of it, I get excited now. My youngest daughter's still in college. And when she calls to talk about what she's doing in class, I love it. Like, it makes me think about new things, and she'll bring up something that she's working on. I'm like, oh, that's kind of curious. I want to kind of understand that more. So yeah, I think we can make this a really broad way to look at it. Like, there's so many ways we can do for professional development. I think it's exciting.
And I think finding the way of making it exciting and exciting and applicable, are like those two pieces. And so if we're not excited, we're probably not walking away retaining, nearly as much information as what that,
right,
whatever it actually contained. So we need that level of excitement, but also we have to look at it through that application piece of how am I going to use the information that's being presented? Because if not, I worry that it goes in one ear and out the other.
Yeah, I mean, it always comes back to, I think, how we're going to apply it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's that whole level of being reflective about it and thinking how we're going to use it. And there are some professional development things I've done and books that I've read that it never gets there. It was great knowledge. If it's on Jeopardy, I'm probably going to get the question right, but it's not going to be an applicable thing. And that's okay. I mean, I think it's okay that sometimes that happens. Sometimes I think we have to take risks in trying something new. We can still be thoughtful on the front end of kind of going, okay, is this really going to apply? Like, I tend not to do much work in geriatrics. So for me to do a geriatric workshop, I'm probably not going to apply that very, very often. So probably I'm not going to do it in front end. But there are other topics I think we can at least explore, see if it's something that does trigger something that we might utilize.
And, as we're talking about this topic, I both mean this and don't mean this as shameless self-promotion, but, that's, I think, such a all of these elements are such crucial parts of what we're looking to do with Psyched to Practice in terms of the continuing education aspect of this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know that you're going to be sending your physician's assistant friend or your police officer friend, oh, check out this website, but wanting it to be a place that makes the content feel like you have a wide range of access, that you have a wide range of interacting with it. And so we talked about how we can interact and be curious with a podcast. At the end of quite a few of our podcast episodes, you'll hear, check out the website for continuing education. That time is now that, it's going to be October 1st. So,
right.
but whether that is live webinars, if it's home study, if it's, wanting to listen to a podcast and taking an accompanying test, that's what we're looking to do, is making it feel engaging, exciting, purposeful, and really also accessible, and I know that, there are just a few, but we are really interested in having this kind of subscription model,
right,
where it doesn't then have to be, you're paying out of pocket and you don't really know how good the workshop's going to be. It can be, hey, it's like a Netflix library, if I'm in the mood for this, I get to go try this out. If I'm going to, really deep dive, if you want to take that obscure thing, I've never heard of that before, let me check it out. It doesn't have this financial barrier to each individual experience. And so, I know that's something that we're really excited to offer, is this subscription aspect when it comes to Psyched to Practice and the continuing education credits that we're offering here.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to just to maybe give a little of the backstory, as we kind of decided to do this, hopefully by listening to what we've been talking about, we are excited about professional development. It's done me extremely well in my career, and I love doing it. But I do know that there are certain barriers that I'm lucky. I've had jobs that I can go to multiple conferences a year. And I think that, when we decided to do this, it was to try to meet a need that was out there, where we know people have limited budgets. We know that sometimes the money we have for budgets are much less than what one conference costs. And so our goal, and hopefully you'll check out our website about this, we are trying to really be intentionally smart with costs to try to make sure that people have the best access for good quality. But it is within a budget that's reasonable in today's professional market, because we know that pain. We've all kind of, I think, been there at some point. But then, back to your point, I think also that variety. So, our goal is that there may be topics that you never thought about doing, but if you want to do it, you can do it. It's easy. And if you're partway through and go, not what I want, it's not a loss. It's something you can kind of look at, and also really trying to make it accessible, whether you're listening in your car, watching on your phone or computer, reading something, whatever it might be, there's options. And, for those of you interested, keep an ear out. We have some we're excited about, things like live discussions, maybe with some of the authors that have written some of the books we've talked about, or we're looking to do some ethics conversations here down the line. These are all things that are going to be kind of part of kind of what we're trying to talk about today, this making it not one stream, but there's all kinds of options to really enhance learning.
And I think the value of taking this type of approach is, going back to what you were sharing about where books lag behind, being able to cast this wide net, being able to talk to some incredible presenters, see them present these incredible webinars, and just walking away going, wow, that's such a wealth of information, and being able to capture and walk away. So just the ability to turn around and talking about some of the things that are really relevant. And a part of that, we have quite a few webinars surrounding AI, and again, AI is still emerging. We'll probably have to update them soon, because but it's still developing, it's still emerging. But I don't know that we're going to be picking up a book anytime soon, and there's going to be an in-depth description of, hey, here's some of the implications of AI usage, or here's some of the ethical use of AI, like those pieces there that are so important. And again, it's what we're living, and so it's not going to be backdated.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's again kind of it was kind of always my thought with when as we're doing this is it's the best way to get information that's the most current out to people, and it's yeah the AI stuff. It's like you almost have to look at it about every few months,
Yeah.
and and that's kind of a part of our process in doing this is really being intentional in us making sure that the information that is part of our learning platform is current. There's this process of, having continual kind of changes in the content over time is important because we do want it to be really kind of cutting edge and in the moment. And, we know some things like ethics don't necessarily change that fast, but maybe cases around ethics do. And so, that's our hope, and hopefully you all kind of check it out and pay attention on social media and other areas that we're kind of talking about what we're doing. But I think you'll see some exciting things coming up in the next month or two.
Yeah. And, please, again, really want to just kind of talk about, well, I believe we're also offering even, for the subscription model, we're offering a discount for some of the early adopters as well. And so, right around when this episode is dropping, it should be when the website is going live. So there'll be a link to the website in the show notes. If you're interested in some of the past episodes that we've identified for CE credits, you can go to the website and we have all of those listed there, as well as if you're just listening back through our back catalog, you will soon be seeing a link pop up to those accompanying courses. So, again, a new era for Psyched to practice while also still staying strong to our roots.
That's right. Well, and it's something we're excited about, and hopefully those of you who have continued to follow us have the same excitement.
I'd even say we're psyched about it.
We are psyched about it. That's it.
Well, and with that, we hope you enjoy this episode. We'll be back in 2 weeks, but until then, be well, stay psyched.